like to contact the show, send us an email at liveonfourlegspodcast@gmail.com or get involved in the conversation on social media. Join the Pearl Jam Podcast community group on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at liveonfourlegspod.
Okay, we met an interesting fellow in a little basement bar club thing last night. You know, one of those guys that says, heroin, it's not addicting. I've been doing it for 8 years. I'm not addicted. Whatever, mate. This song's for you. And away we go.
You're listening to Live on Four Legs, the live Pearl Jam podcast experience, featuring
Mr. Stone Gossard. Fucking Cameron in the drum. Mr. Boom Gasper. You can call me Al, you can call me Ed, you just fucking call me, why don't you?
Hey everybody, now welcome to Live on Four Legs, a definitive live Pearl Jam podcast, and top of the morning to you. We are almost got a couple days left until we are back on tour for the second leg in Europe. It's only 9 shows, which is kind of light for the European run. We've seen them the last couple times. I think 2022 was supposed to be in total, I think 14 or 15, ended up being around 13 or 12. And then in 2018, I think there were 18, 17 around that, but it was a lot. And now we're kind of down to 9 a little bit, but they're good locations, including the one we're going to cover today, Dublin, Ireland. Then we're going to go to Manchester, UK. Then we're going to go to London. Then we're going to have 2 in Berlin. Then we're going to have 2 in Barcelona. And then we're going to do 2 festivals, Lisbon, Portugal, and Madrid, Spain. So a lot to get into, and this episode will be a lot of fun because we are going back to Dublin from 1996. A year that we don't cover very often, but happy to have it whenever it comes on our plate. So we have that, and we'll talk about this little delay that they've been on. It's a 14-year absence since they were in Dublin the last time, which feels like a long time. I know that the brethren around there, Scotland, Wales, they've been suffering a little longer, but still, Ireland has had their own extended delay as well. So let's talk about everything and in between and get you prepped up and excited for this tour. Randy Sobel over here, John Farrar over there.
Hello.
Hey now. So now we are at the second leg. We kind of know exactly what this is going to look like. Maybe, I don't know. Do you think that they're going to bring the stage and the Videotron and everything like that? You think they're going to wrap that up and bring it overseas? I would think that they would have to because it's part of the experience. But there's a lot of questions that can still be asked, but still, we have an idea of where they're going to go with this. I don't think they're going to stray too far from the norm when it comes to the girth of the Dark Matter songs. I think they'll still play a ton of them, but I think they kind of have a structure here. And I know we'll hear songs that we haven't heard in a long time. I know that they'll pull in the rarities and they'll pull in the hits as well, as they always do. I'm not speaking a different language here or anything like that, but it seems like we kind of have a path for this tour looking into the next 9 shows.
Yeah, I think we know, but I don't know if it's gonna be the same. I wonder if they're gonna try to change things up because yeah, the screen, I think, we saw in a show that we're gonna cover next week, the Hyde Park shows where they used what was available, right? They used the video screen that was there. I don't know if they're gonna be able to use the full stage spanning screen that they've been using, but I think they'll try to work with what they have. And I don't know, think they might have some surprises up still. I don't know that it's gonna be exactly the same as it was on the West Coast. Like, I can see them maybe trying out some different things, being that it's still so early. I mean, we've only got one leg under us. I know it's tempting to be like, "Oh, yeah, we know everything that's gonna happen," but I can see them maybe opening with some Dark Matter songs, trying to get those out of the way early, which we haven't seen yet, maybe mixing some things up a little bit. We saw that near the end of the West Coast leg, like doing some different things here and there, but I can see them trying some different things on this leg because, like, yeah, you're going to be playing some festivals, you're in front of a different audience. The European crowd is different than the American crowd. They will try to tailor things to what they know I think will work there. So I don't know that it's going to be exactly the same. I think we might be in for some different looking shows.
Yeah, well, you said surprises, and I want to kind of put that aside for a second to kind of react to that. But if there's going to be surprises, then you got to surprise us. And we'll kind of maybe put out some predictions out there, some hot takes, I suppose. But I don't disagree with you. I think that a lot of the dark matter stuff will still be structured in the way it is. I think that's how they'll start. I still think that the goal and the purpose of this is to do the first four and maybe switch it up. I can see like through the first two shows that they still do Scared of Fear through Dark Matter. And one of my things is I think they just got to switch Dark Matter up because that I don't want to say it's flailing in that number four spot there, but it can do so much better. It hasn't had that community shared reaction that I thought it was going to have. And I think we thought it was going to have when the single came out. I've been thinking of like ways that they can work that in. I still think that you do the first three and then you go right into dark matter. You just rip it
Hmm.
off. And maybe for the festivals, try opening with it. I
Yeah,
think,
yeah, I can see that for sure.
yes, I think that they need to capitalize on that song at some point. And they're all good. They're all good songs. They're all good performances, but they feel stuck. They just need to move around a little bit and kind of dance around the set and see where else they can be now that they have 11 shows under their belt, the first four from the record.
Yeah, that one especially felt like it's tailor-made for a festival crowd to, like, pump their fist and sing along to. It's got the very easy chorus, easy to sing along to. Yeah, that one feels like they could open with it or do it early and get the crowd on their side a little bit. Yeah, I'd be surprised if they don't.
We'll see what happens to that, but I think we have other questions, of course, with Won't Tell. I think that kind of got shafted a little bit when it came to what was going to make it to the set and what was going to be left off the cutting room floor. We know that Got to Give was
Mm,
absolutely not favored by this
one
band, but
time, yeah.
yeah, and I think they'll bust it out a couple more times. Look, they have double shows in both Berlin and Barcelona that they can work with
Oh,
things.
we said that in Seattle and
We
LA and
said that in Seattle and
still,
LA,
yeah.
and it didn't happen. I think LA got Won't Tell, but I don't remember.
Mm.
The sets are running together, but like they're not playing Stevie at this point. They're probably not playing Upper Hand. Maybe one or two shows may not have it. One of the festivals, maybe, but I think everything around it will be interesting once again to see okay, how do they tailor? Do they tailor with hits? Do they tailor with rarities? Do we get to have the big moment? It feels like every show kind of had an emotionally gripped moment on this tour. Maybe one or two didn't, but it feels like there was a performance that was solely dedicated for that moment. And the last two, getting Man of the Hour and Love Boat Captain, like those are pretty deep ones to pluck out of the catalog here. So I'm not going to predict what's going to happen. I will say that they did dedicate one to Tom Pugh, I believe, in either Vancouver or Sacramento, one of those places, maybe even Portland. But maybe they do something in London where he came from, like just ideas that I'm spitting out there. But I'll go back to surprises. What would totally surprise you on this tour? And don't do a cheat code. Don't do the Dirty Frank cheat code or the
Mm.
Sweet Lou cheat code or anything like
Mm.
that. What's a true, genuine surprise that no one would see coming?
Ooh. Yeah, it's tough because we still saw a lot of tour debuts and a lot of cool things. I'll say Stone singing, like Mankind, Don't Give Me No Lip,
I think
Breakout.
we're due. Yeah, I think we're
Yeah,
due.
it feels like that would be a big moment because, like, the way that things are now, it feels like Ed is very much the focal point with the video screens and everything. And it's been a while, I think, since we've had a true Stone scene. I think they maybe did. I didn't go back and look. Maybe they
Amsterdam.
did. Yeah, Don't Give Me No Lip last year, maybe 2 years
Not
ago.
last year, the year before.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
Don't Give Me No
2 years
Lip
ago.
was Fresno in
Hmm.
22, and then Mankind, I believe, in Amsterdam, because
Yeah.
both connecting with Ed not having any voice in both those
Hmm.
shows.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, Stone singing would be something interesting.
You're only saying
And
that because we're going to talk about that later. That's just a tease.
no, I mean that's we somebody had brought it up on the Discord too the other day. That got me thinking about it as well. And then yeah, maybe like we saw Black as an opener for the first time since 1991. Maybe like Alive as an opener again, or something crazy like that. Porch as an opener, one of those songs.
Yeah, we did see, and we're going to cover it next week. I believe we're going to cover the night one show for Hyde Park next week,
Yeah,
and that's Better Man opener.
yeah.
So a lot of what we've seen in Europe sometimes is sort of the try and see if it sticks shows. I felt like that Frankfurt show was there. It always feels like they do Fatal in Europe. It always seems like they're bringing it up there. So I'm going to say that they'll probably pull at it again. It's not like surprise, surprise, but it's very, very welcome indeed. But as far as surprises go, what's going to really get this crowd and this community going? That's a great question. The big one is a song we talked about last week in Get Right. I give
Hmm.
that a 2% chance of happening.
Oh,
And
less.
if it does happen, then you can quote me on saying that. There's always the OTOTOs. How about that? An OTOTO for one of these places. What
Mm.
would work? You know what I mean? Like, what are we looking at?
Do they maybe do like Boys Are Back in Town?
That's not an
Or
OTOTO. They've done
I
that
know, but
before.
or Jailbreak, something like that. But like it would be they've only done it once or twice, though it would still be something that would get people's attention. Manchester do Joy Division or Smith's cover in Manchester.
Interesting. Here's the thing, like, I'm looking at the albums and the deep cuts, and I guess I don't like saying this, but there's not a lot that you can say that would be, like, completely overwhelming for people, I don't think.
Yeah. I think you're
Like,
you're in that realm of like because Unemployable came back last year for the first time in 10 years.
right.
You're looking at your like Can't Keeps, Gones, Worldwide Suicide, things like that that have been gone since that 2014
But those
ish
songs
run.
wouldn't shake things up, you
Yeah,
know? It
yeah,
wouldn't make a headline, it wouldn't get people talking. Like, Bugs would get people talking,
I'm sure.
but I give that just as small of a percent
Hmm.
chance as Get Right.
Yeah,
If you go to the deeper cuts, like, is Strangest Tribe, is that in the mix? Yeah, maybe.
maybe.
Like, that one would get people talking again. It's been a while since they did that. Obviously, Grammy would get people talking for sure.
Never, never.
I know, and probably doesn't make any sense in Europe, but, like, that's the one I think that
But yeah, you need
everybody'd be like,
Brendan
"Holy
O'Brien
shit."
play guitar, and I don't think Mike even knows how to play it.
Well, he could figure it out. He's
Hmm.
okay at what he does. Maybe here's the thing. Maybe that the more we think about it, the more that we come up with all these ideas, and that we'll just be surprised when it actually happens anyway. So look, we can exhaust all of it, but I think it just doesn't matter in a sense. Like, if they're going to pull out a surprise, it's going to be something that we are going to be surprised about,
Yeah, yeah,
obviously. So maybe we're just not supposed to know, and that's okay.
yeah. I
And
mean,
that's
they're.
good enough for us.
I mean, we know how mercurial Ed is about these things. He's probably thinking about it right now, like working up something that they've never done before, or something, some kind of surprise that's take us all. And oh, how did we not see that coming? But they'll do something unique. He's always got something up his sleeve.
Here we go. I got one. Here is going to be my bold prediction for this 9 show run. They're going to do a mirror ball song. Just going to throw that out there.
Throw Your Hatred Down has been around. Yeah, that
It has, but
wouldn't
I'm
surprise me.
thinking like Act of Love. I'm thinking that kind of deep because that I think would steal a
Mm,
headline.
Song X, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, well, there's a lot of opportunities to do that in Ohana, obviously. And I think that there's an idea
Yeah.
there like, hey, let's practice it a couple times,
Hey,
I
Neil's
suppose.
Neil's been doing On the Ocean on his tour.
Right.
He's
I
been
think
doing,
we'll
yeah.
probably see that at some point in the September future. But anyway, that is all that you can look forward to, of course. Now let's get into a little bit with the 96 show. So they are in Ireland to start. It's a pretty good place to kick things off. And I think in 2010, they kicked things off in Ireland as well. I think they went from Dublin to Belfast in back to back days. So they're doing the same thing. They're kind of going on a similar trajectory here. And it's been since 2010 since they'd played there, which it feels like a long time. And granted, I got the Scots and the Welsh that are looking at me right now, being like, how could you? How dare you? We didn't get our shows again this year. It's been 24 years. I understand that. Trust me, I'm pulling for everybody. But still, when it comes to Ireland, that's a destination spot. People are going to travel there. It is a little surprising that they've taken 14 years to go back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, especially all the times they've been in Europe, you would think they would have just backed into it at one point. Dublin's a big city, but it's not a London, it's not an Amsterdam, it's not a Paris. So kind of start there and then work your way towards the continent. But yeah, it does seem like a long time.
Actually, the number on this is interesting just overall in Ireland. They've, I don't want to say ignored Ireland, but it hasn't been favorable, obviously, in the last 14 years will tell you that. But they played Slane Castle opening up for Neil Young in 1993. That's something to keep in mind because that episode is going to be on our Patreon this week. So have that ready in the back of your head. Then they did these 2 shows. So the show before this, again, another tour opener, was in Cork, Ireland. And this is obviously Dublin. These are the first 2 shows of the 96 European tour. So this is obviously some kind of a trend. In 2000, they do it. In 2006, they do it. The same place that they play the 96 show that we're going to talk about. It's called the Point Theater. And then 2010 and what's going to be this weekend. And that's it. That feels light, but they've had some pretty good moments in Ireland. I think the 2010 show and the Of the Earth debut is legendary and special. I think a lot of people still bring that up when it comes to special moments that have happened and have been seen at Pearl Jam shows for sure. And as you mentioned before, like Boys Are Back in Town, they've brought that out. But this time in 1996, it wasn't really about that. It was about finding the best material that your crowd is going to react to and just ramping it up. And this show is going to have a lot of no code songs, 7 of them, and a lot of good energy from this crowd. 1996, in some ways, I don't see as like an energetic year, but this one I think had a really good crowd and the band reacted to it well.
You just jogged my mind on something. The ultimate surprise would be them doing a new song like a Dark Matter outtake that we'd never heard before. That would be the ultimate. But yeah, 96, it doesn't have like the magic I think that 95 had, but no coda's out, so you're getting those songs sprinkled in, which is very, very cool. And people know I love a Jack show, so yeah, this is always great.
All right, why don't we dig in? And Ireland is no different than basically every other city on this planet that Pearl Jam has been to. I wonder how many times that you can say, or how many cities around the world where you can pinpoint that Pearl Jam has played, or you can say they've opened with release at this place. I would say they cover a real lot of ground. And of course, for Ireland, they do. That's how it opens up here. The crowd kind of singing. It's a little bit lightly, but you can hear them singing along to this. And the mix isn't great. It's okay. You can hear things, but obviously you want more depth. You want more layers. I think the guitars are kind of, at sometimes the counterparts aren't great. But I think along with that, what got me for release is that usually you want the power to just drill through your jugular. And I think because of the way that it's mixed, you might miss that a little bit. Jack doesn't feel as heavy of a presence. Maybe again, that's the mix, but this seemed to be a more quote unquote tamer show for Jack, I suppose. But it felt like maybe you needed to hear more intensity on release to bring this to life.
It's a different style, obviously, than Cameron. Release is not one of his strongest songs. Some of the 10 stuff I don't think is in his wheelhouse. Black, I don't think he ever really latched onto in an important way. And Release, I think, is the same way. I think when Matt joined, Release took on something else. He was able to do some things with it and really build that ending to something cool. But yeah, the crowd sounds great on it. I mean, we're going to talk about it. This Dublin crowd loves to clap. I mean, if you guys are going to the show on Saturday, make sure you're up on the clapping.
We love our clapping European crowds, that's for sure. I'm talking to you specifically, Eastern Europe. You guys know what you do on Small Town, that double clap right there, that works to perfection. Too bad that I think the most east they're going is probably Germany, but hey, think about that in the back of your mind, and utilize it as much as you can. But yeah, it gets you into the show, and the first three, you're sandwiching Animal between two Vitalogy songs, Last Exit Animal and Spin the Black Circle. I think that's a very, very strong combination. And there's some high points, there's some low points in this. I think the Last Exit transitional botch at the end kind of throws the song off a little bit. We've heard a version recently. I can't remember what show it was, but do you remember the show where they completely just had to abort it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they don't do that here. Ed makes up for it with trademark howls on it. It felt good. Jack versions of Animal feel real tight, like he's bringing more of a frantic pace to it instead of what Dave or Matt would do with kind of the strong bombastic, like where you feel the intensity of those toms. He's sticking very directly within the snare range on this, and it feels tight, maybe a little faster, but I think the frantic pace kind of gives it a little bit of that. But this is another one the crowd sings along a little bit, and Mike's solo is fantastic too on that. He goes in a different direction than what's typical for Animal. He's waiting to hit the high notes instead of like blistering out of the gate with them. That's what I love out of Animal. Black Circle and Animal for Jack are really played very similarly, not relying on the cymbals as much as if Cameron were playing it. And again, Spin, I think you hear a little bit of the crowd from too.
Yeah, the crowd sounds really good. The last exit thing is interesting because you're listening to it and it gets to that middle part, and it felt like maybe Jack wanted to extend it a little bit, like they wanted to maybe turn that into a little jam session and see where it went and kind of meander a little bit on that. So they take an extra measure on it, and then I don't know if it was Stone was like, nope, we're going back to the chorus, and it kind of threw them off a little bit. There was a little bit of confusion as to like, are we going now? Okay, so the people, someone was a little bit late coming in, and it kind of threw everything up in the air on the song, and everyone had to kind of like, okay, and go. But they get to the end of it. But this is an audience bootleg, so you hear the crowd look good. I mean, Animal, especially the first one that you kind of get going, because Last Exit doesn't have a big crowd fist pumping moment, but Animal does. So yeah, I agree that the crowd's really good on this.
And hey, Ed agrees with you. So far, so good up here. Good for you guys. It's good. Let's get into 2 no code songs in corduroy. Hail, hail in my tree, then corduroy. So it feels like the mix improves a little bit once you get into Hail Hail. It feels like you're able to hear a little bit more depth now, and you're starting to hear Jeff. That's what I'm thinking about in this version of Hail Hail. That's usually what I'm thinking about in this song, that you just hear Jeff. It's just strong, especially going into that bridge and how bright and bouncy he sounds in this. Always love when they're kind of just letting it just sort of sit there and kind of let it dissipate a little bit and just like fade into the background almost. This was a very good version of Hail Hail, very intense.
I agree. I like this a lot. Like you're talking about, they just kind of sit on that ending and just ride it out. Like the wave metaphor is apt again. Like you're going to just ride that and just let it come in. The ending of Hail Hail is always really good, but to me, it was like, oh, here's Jack. Like, here's what we're looking for in a Jack show. Like, just absolutely bouncing on the toms there and riding that beat really, really well. Jack sounds great on Hail Hail.
And speaking of Jack, that tribal intro of In My Tree, we're going into the frickin' jungle here. Every time that we get that little bit and piece, the image goes into my head. Octopus arms. He's going for it. 8 arms hitting like on a Neil Peart drum set with like 29 pieces or whatever he has. all out to get this going. It's phenomenal.
And then the clapping is back, though. It felt like in the intro they're clapping along with Jack, and it's kind of like, is it going to throw him off? Like, are they on the beat?
Time with that?
Yeah, it's impressive. Like, it kind of affects, like, you don't get to hear the full effect because the clapping is very loud. Like, they're right on the beat there. But that's a hard song to clap along with.
And I think when this song starts to accelerate, obviously it has a couple acceleration moments, but I think when that first chord comes in after Ed finishes singing the first verse, like you feel the warmth of the song kind of drift into you, and it gets to soar into the atmosphere. Mike sounds terrific on it, and yeah, Jack kind of throws in an extra fill on the end of that, and just, you know, the thing just soars and explodes for a great version in my trade at the show.
Oh yeah, that's maybe my favorite moment in all of Pearl Jam's catalog.
A song that isn't that hard to clap along with is Corduroy, and there was clapping right from the very beginning into the bridge, everywhere. Yep, the clapping.
It almost falls apart too. Corduroy gets real quiet, and the clapping, like, it felt like it threw the crowd off a little bit. Like, it kind of got a little messy, but then they picked it back up at the end.
Yeah, that bridge almost died.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can hear a little bit of the bass linger, and that was it. But then you pick it back up and you kind of get back to the original riff of the song and build it back into the solo. And I mean, that's where it pops and that's where it goes off. I think this stretch is easily my favorite stretch in this show. Hail, Hail, and My Trading Corduroy. I think that they were just on top of their game with these songs at the time. All right, let's dig into Small Town, then dig into Lucan. Versions of Small Town that don't open up with the 1 2 3 4 2 3 are so much fun. And it's this pretty little ditty intro. And he's done this before. There are versions where you'll hear he does this, but it's just a nice way, especially you're coming off of something big, a massive moment like Corduroy. Now, all right, this is a good time to dip a little bit when you get into Small Town. So you do that pretty little intro, and then it's going to grow and blossom and turn into the song. I love that about versions of Small Town. Like, very rare. We always get the 1 2 3 4 2 3 nowadays. That's pretty obvious, but the version, it kind of leads to it being a little bit more of a folky vibe with a little extra kick and a smooth ending on it. But yeah, I think that the intro kind of set the tone real nice for the song.
It sounded like Ed playing guitar on it too. I know, Stone
I think it was.
Yeah, we usually see Stone come in, yeah. And it's just the one electric guitar at the beginning, just Ed and electric guitar, and the band waits to come in until later, almost like kind of a Better Man effect on it, which gave it a little bit of a different feel. Like, anytime you get just Ed and electric guitar, it's going to be something very special.
So, of course, you're going to go with one of your most mid-tempo songs that you have at the time to your least mid-tempo song that you have. What a juxtaposition, right? You're going from Small Town into Lucan. Now, Ed says something a little unintelligible before getting into Lucan, which you would think is very fitting. However, this isn't going to be a flyover song at this show. I liked this version of Lucan a lot. Maybe the enjoyment comes from whenever you hear it and you can hear Ed enunciate those words and actually make something of it. Now, he doesn't get it perfect. It's not a perfect 100 score. Anytime he gets into the song, that's where he just wants to start and then pick up. So he'll do the no, my keys, and like on and on and on and on. Nothing like that.
No.
But it felt like this is one of the better attempts that I've ever heard from Lucan. Like, very much you can hear the words that he's saying, and there's no fumbling once he gets out of that little rut in the first or second word.
Yeah, he's definitely the highlight on these. Sounds great on it. But I think what he says in the beginning is the song's dedicated to all the fucking bullshit. That's what I heard.
I would
Listened
usually
to it
hear
a
something
couple of
like that,
times.
so I'm a
Yeah,
little surprised.
it's
But
very, very quick. But it's all about what Ed's doing here. Like a lot of times it'll get too fast and he'll get caught up, but he's really barking through and getting through those lyrics quick.
yeah, like I said, it's one of the better versions of Lucan, especially lyrically, that you'll hear. So it's up there. And now from Ed singing Lucan to somebody else singing Mankind.
All right, I'm gonna sing a stupid song for you.
Obviously, as we kind of mentioned before, Mankind would be one of those songs that is a surprise. It doesn't matter where it comes. The allure of Stone singing anytime he does is something that we all clamor for. We all know the Let Stone Sing moments, and it's something that doesn't get old. And when they were working with Mankind and playing it a decent amount during this time, it didn't have a novelty of like, hey, Stone singing or anything like that. I think they realized, well, the record has a song that Stone sings, so of course they're going to play a song off the record. But as the lore and the legend goes, it continues to be one of these chaser, exciting moments at a show. I've only seen it once, so that's how rare it is. 31 shows.
I've never seen it. I've seen Don't Give Me No Lip once, but
that still counts for a Stone moment at least.
Sure.
I really liked the performance here. I think it was really inspired and peppy. And I don't want to say that recent versions aren't inspired and peppy, but I think they kind of get through recent versions. College comes to mind.
Well, of course, yeah, but it's like a test now. Can they get through it?
Right.
And, you see if they do, like, Stone's really excited, and you see him kind of, like, you see that smile on his face. But, man, this version, though, Jack's intro on this, where he just comes in, just pops, like that fill that goes in the beginning is unbelievable. That's the Jag moment from the show. I was like, wow, it leads to a really good version. I think this is one of the better Mankind's, too.
Yeah, I think when they were doing it on this tour, and even into 1998 a little bit, it still had that, okay, let's go and let's rip this song. And then later when it becomes a novelty, it's like, let's just have fun. Let's just have a good time with this. And Stone, you can tell in his singing voice, the way, again, you want to talk about enunciating, the way he's enunciating the lyrics, and sometimes he can be a little bit reserved. It is Stone. He's not as extroverted as Ed is on the stage. But here, you can tell he's very eager to do this, and the rest of the band projects it. Everybody had a lot of fun. The solo felt blazing in this, which I don't know of a lot of Mankind versions where you're like, whoa, where did Mike come from? But this is one of them. So there you go. I think he's just warming up for what he's about to do on Even Flow, which is going to be the next of the songs. The next three are going to be massive hits, which means clapping and singing along. So here we go with that. Now, I think Jack gave Mike a ton of space to go off on Even Flow. You're not used to that. You're used to more of kind of the go. You're used to Cameron just keeping the machine going. But I think it felt like Jack wanted to make room for Mike and sort of compliment him. And I've heard this from Jack versions of Even Flow before. That's usually a tactic that he does. But when he does that, you can feel Mike even more in front of the mix than usual. He's very, very Hendrix-like in this. He's getting shreddy at times. He's getting bluesy at times. I think it's a good mix of both Hendrix and SRV. Very appropriate, but it's a good rocker. And I think that Jack opening up to give Mike that space was very good.
I love when Mike will come in and just hang on a note and just like hit that note and really put the soul and the power into it, and he does that here. But as far as Jack goes, yeah, I think it's another tense song, and that just like Release, Jack never really put his stamp on those songs. How crazy would it have been to get a drum solo in the Jack era and Even Flow? Like, that just would have been beyond belief, but it doesn't happen. He plays these 10 songs very, very straight.
And that's okay. Like, again, they aren't his songs.
Yeah, not bad. Just, it's not like he did with the Vitality songs, like Immortality and Corduroy, where you saw him really stretch it out and really go off, or like we talked about in Hail Hail even. Like, you don't get that sense of him on the 10 songs really doing that.
I mean, think about it. Say you join a band, you're in a band.
Sure.
And say you join a band and they are established and you have to play their songs that another bass player has established before you join.
Of course.
Like, are you going to be as excited to play those? You'll be excited to play those, but your instinct is to keep them as close to the sound that you heard them prior to you joining the band.
Right.
And then once you write other songs and get involved that way, then you feel like you're more a part of the process. And maybe that's a little bit what Jack needed. And I don't know why saying that. He's great on a ton of verses, and especially everything Vitality he's fantastic on.
Yeah.
And he wasn't in the process, but they were getting to figure out Vitality with him. So I think that kind of worked alongside of that. So maybe it's just a little bit of that. All right. We got more hits to go here. Daughter and Jeremy. Daughter takes it right away, the crowd. They're fantastic throughout the song. And then the shade goes down, and we get a little bit philosophical here with the shades. And this is kind of interesting because the shades are a metaphor that is used in Pearl Jam with two different songs on the same record, with Daughter being the shades go down, and then Rearview Mirror, finally the shades are raised. And he asks the crowd, he says, if the shades are down, why not pull them up? And I think that might go into a little bit of how he's feeling at the show. He's in a good mood, it seems. He does get a little bit chatty in a little while. He does talk to this crowd a little bit and tells them a story or two. I think it's just an idea that he's in a good mood. And that's when he says positive things. Like, I don't think he would say that in the years prior. Like, he just didn't bring that to the stage. But it feels like this is a blossom of an Ed that we'd see much, much, much later on that had all of the positive energy.
He gets really into the idea of pulling the shades up. He's yelling, like, pull them up, pull them up. Yeah, 3 or 4 times. Of course, you get a noise of carpet, which is great and fitting. You're talking about Daughter gives you the sense of being in this room where the shades are down, and the noise of carpet kind of ties in with that. I always like that tag. It has a cool vocal melody. Always sounds good against the Daughter riff.
So Jeremy follows up on that. It's another good big hit, crowd pleaser, and you have those three in a row. Those songs are just the Pearl Jam songs. It defines the band at the time, especially with a catalog of 4 albums plus some extras here and there. I want to ask you this because it feels a little odd that Go would be the transition out of that. Because wouldn't you think that maybe Immortality or something would work after Jeremy?
Mm.
Like to Go, I think it was a disservice to the song. I didn't think that Go had that push that it usually does, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's not something that we've seen a lot. Obviously, it would in the Versus era. You saw it really early on, paired with Animal. Now you'll see it in an encore or kind of as the next to last song of a set, if you get it at all these days. But this is a weird spot for Go. And like on paper, it feels like maybe that doesn't work. But I think you've built up so much goodwill with the crowd over the previous 3 songs that I think they're ready to go with you wherever you want to go. No pun intended. It's a weird spot, but I think what hurts it more is that someone is very, very much out of tune in this version at a couple of different points too. But by the end, I think it gets to that kind of crazy chaos that you want out of the song.
Yeah, and I think it's less about the crowd. The crowd is going to be into it when they hear it. No doubt that's going to happen. I think it's just the artistry. I love the artistry of curating sets and how they balance. And Go to me feels like, all right, let's get back into this thing. And this was a moment that felt like, okay, let's bring it down before getting back into this thing, if you know what I mean. So that's just where I am with that. But Ed is offering some water to people in front and tells a little bit of the story because we're in Ireland and that's where storytellers are, right? Says we met an interesting fellow in a bar basement club last night. One of those guys who says, heroin's not addicting. I've been doing it for 10 years and I'm not addicted. Well, whatever, mate. This song's for you. And it works out because Habit is the song about addiction. Habit's going to go into immortality. And he's kind of pulling a little sarcasm in some of those lines in the chorus there. And I wonder if that's sort of a nudge to the guy that was saying, oh, I'm not addicted to heroin kind of deal.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I was kind of waiting for the speaking as line to kind of tie into that, but he just kind of goes, speaking is. Like, I don't know if he couldn't think of anything or if he was trying to mimic like an addict frame of mind or the way the guy was talking, but it was definitely tailored to that person in mind. Yeah.
Probably, yeah. So I'm going to cut Habit from there because we talked about the intro to Small Town, and you can't talk about intros if you don't include the incredible intro to Immortality. It's one of my favorite things. I told the story before that I hadn't heard Immortality before at a show when I first heard it, and they did that, and I had no idea what they were going into. So you kind of get entranced and you're like, okay, could this be something new? Could this be something different? I don't know what direction they're going in. And then once Ed hits that little note rundown, the reveal of that is perfect. Unfortunately, you can never get that again. You just got to remember the first time that you hear it. And I will remember that moment in Buffalo. Ever since then, I've been obsessed with this Immortality intro. But it's rare that it comes across. They haven't done it recently. It doesn't feel like it feels like it would work in this era, right? It doesn't make any sense that they wouldn't bring it back.
This is one of the best ones. It's a little bit extended. It really felt like it had a little bit of like a swing to it. It's fantastic. I mean, Immortality is probably the best live song of the Jack era. I mean, as much as I love In My Tree and Corduroy and things like that, every time we talk about Immortality in this era, it's like, oh my God, like sit down because we're going to be here for a while. The ending jam, I mean, just again, you get to hear Jack kind of go off and do his thing. It's always amazing. But yeah, I mean, just another stellar version from this era. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I think when the solo gets in, it kind of starts off a little slow and then it just picks up right away. And then when it picks up, Jack just tortures the crap out of his kid. So when you know from there and when you hear that, you're like, okay, we're in for something pretty good. It has the power on the outro. It's a lot of rapid hits instead of like the barreling, completely out of control kind of outros to Immortality, especially one that we heard a couple weeks ago with that Salt Lake City show. It's excellent, but there's a lot more rapid, kind of fast things, kind of a little bit more frantic, like we were talking about with something like Animal before. So he's throwing that into the mix a little bit here, which different is good. I'm always for. So Alive and Blood are going to be the last two in your set here. So Alive is, of course, crowd. You want another big crowd song? This is right there for them. Once it gets to, is that the question? Whoa, they're in on it. They are screaming at the top of their lungs. And it feels like a pretty big party. And you know what? Jack has some moments on this one too. I feel like almost when Jack is going off on this, he's hitting really hard. He's just tearing a hole into that. And before it got to that pivotal ending moment, it kind of abruptly stops. And it felt like they could have had more of that. They could have extended it a little more and taken it to another level. But good for what we got. But I was hoping for just a little bit of an extension on it.
Is that just the era, you think? Like they just weren't doing that at this time?
I don't really have an answer for that.
Yeah,
It could be era. It could just be they're thinking, okay, get to Blood, and we want to get a bunch of encore songs in too. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure on that. But for Blood here, interesting version of Blood, of course. We got Ed doing a little bit of the scatting, like kind of the I don't know what he's doing here. He's just kind of playing around with like the mic EQ a little bit. It's not Atomic Dog, even though it has that presence of Atomic Dog at first, but it's in the same family, but it's not going to be the Atomic Dog tag. It's going to be Fame, the Bowie song. So we get that. It's a very long bridge. They sit on that for a while. Maybe that was the goal. It was like, okay, let's cut Alive short a little bit and let's extend Blood and let's see what we got on Blood. But it would have been a very good version of Blood, but he botches the Painhead Big part. I think you need that because it makes that moment feel big. It makes it feel special, and he totally misplaces it, and it doesn't ruin the song, but you need that part for it to feel whole.
Yeah, it loses a little bit of the manic energy of it, but yeah, he's got some kind of effects on the vocals during that, like before they get into the Fame tag. Felt like he had something plugged into the mic that he was, like I said, messing with some EQ or something, trying to get his voice to do some crazy things there to add to the feeling of it. But Fame is very cool. I mean, Atomic Dog is what it is, but I prefer Fame. This is my favorite Blood tag that they do.
Yeah, I'm probably in the same boat. I think I just like the song better.
Yeah.
Nothing against Atomic Dog at all, but
Sure.
it's bow wow wow yippee yo yippee yay. Like, I would take Fame over that in a heartbeat. Plus, Fame was the walk-up music for David Wright, so I have a good attachment to that song. Hey, you gotta throw it in there.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there are episodes where we don't mention baseball at all, and that's sad. Because every episode from 1 to 100 probably had a baseball reference. So,
And especially the summer ones. We're in the summer now. It's baseball season.
we're in the summer. I'm literally working baseball games every other week, like every day, every other week. I was at the ballpark 3 days already this week, so it should be ingrained into my brain, but hey, we got one in. Anyway, we're at the encore. Let's pause for station identification. We got one patron to thank this week, and it is a fellow named Andy from Australia. So thank you very much, Andy from Australia.
Nice. That's great.
And hopefully you stick around to get the reaction episodes from those Australian shows. That will be happening in November. We should be very, very excited to get on top of that. So, speaking of reaction episodes, that is the next big thing for Patreon. We'll talk about a couple episodes here and there in a second or two, but that's what's going to get you excited for the next 9 shows here is the reaction episodes coming from all of the European spots. And we have some plans here. We have some plans. It's going to be very tough to do the live reaction episode. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to do it for any show. Maybe we give 1 or 2 a try, but I think the way that we're going to do this is that we have some people on site that are going to watch the show. They're going to relay us the set list, and then they're going to record something afterwards. And it doesn't just have to be those people. If you want to be one of these people that record something after the show, talk about what you just saw and what you liked, and talk to your friends and get everybody around you's reaction or something like that, feel free. It is an open floor here. Everybody is welcome to do so. I've gotten a lot of response so far. I think like 16 people for 9 shows. That's excellent. So anybody else wants to join the train, please feel free. Welcome aboard for any of the shows. It doesn't matter, but especially Madrid. So, of course, the first one will be Dublin, and I think we got a ton of people that are going to be there. I believe Mr. John Cooney has been kind enough to invite his bus mates that he's taking a bus, I guess, from the venue to the hotel. And they're all going to do a reaction episode from the bus. They're going to have
nice.
That should be very exciting. A bunch of drunk bus, I would say. I wonder who we'll hear from, but like that should, I'm really excited to hear what's going to come out of that. And, it's just moments like that, like you're going to hear from the fans, and that's what we like out of this. And every time that we hear from somebody, we'll react and respond to it, but they're going to know the shows better than we are. We don't know necessarily for Europe. It's a little tough. Like maybe a person here or there is going to live stream, but again, a lot of these shows are during the day on the East Coast, so it will be tougher with work, with taking care of children and things like that, that we are on top of everything. So we'll try our best to be, but I think that's going to limit the amount of time that we do a live reaction episode. That will be back once we get into the August and September shows, of course, and then we'll be back into the groove on that. But the reaction episodes will still be great. They'll be wonderful. We'll still hear from people, and it'll still be the post-game show. Nothing is changing. Nothing is changing except for the setup a little bit. But if you're interested in that, and hell, if you want to go back and listen to any of the reaction that we did from the first 11 shows, that's all up on Patreon as well. Everything from Vancouver up to Seattle, we did all of them. And we talked to everybody that we could from site that were fantastic guests, including everybody that we got to talk to in Seattle. That was wonderful. There's nothing better than after a show just gathering with your friends and seeing what their reaction was to everything. Like, I barely got to say anything during those episodes because I was just like, all right, you go. Now you go. We spent like 20 minutes on the phone here and Javier hasn't talked yet. And you want to hear, we had guys from Venezuela come over. We had a woman from Japan come over. There were so many people that were interested in this, that wanted to be a part of it. And that's what's fun to me. So I can't wait to hear from people. It's going to be so much fun, and I think you guys will have a lot of fun listening to this as well. The way that you can join up on Patreon, patreon.com/live on 4 legs, or download the Patreon app and search for Live on 4 legs, or you can just go to liveon4legs.com, get into the Concertpedia articles and some of the stuff that we have over there, and then you can just go to the top, the Become a Patron button, and you can donate to our cause at Live on 4 legs. That helps us out with our funding. So if you join up on Patreon right now, we do have a new episode of the Gear Garage. Yeah, we have Deconstructing Dark Matter Part 1 that Javier put together, and he just keeps raising the game here. This was a really good one. Now he's adding in some drum tracks, and he's adding in a little bit of extra bells and whistles to this too. You guys got to listen to this one. It goes through Scared of Fear, React, Respond, and Wreckage, and he just does another tremendous job on it and explains, goes through the Dumble amps and everything like that, and kind of explains the band's process and kind of puts it in the forefront for you guys to understand what's going on and what you're hearing. He does it so well and so articulately that it works. He's fantastic at it. So that's a part of Patreon. That's up on Patreon. That's a Patreon series. And also coming very, very soon, probably at the end of the week, right before the Dublin show drops, we're going to do the Slane Castle show from 1993. Pearl Jam opened up for Neil Young at the famous Slane Castle venue. It's not just a venue, it's a freaking castle. And we're going to be talking about what that venue is and how magnificent it is. And it being a very, very large venue for a band that didn't necessarily want to play those large venues at the time. It's a 9-song set, but if you hear from a lot of people, they would say that a lot of the young kids bailed after Pearl Jam, so the Neil Young set might have been a little bit sparse. But it's a good mix of what they had already established with 10, mixed in with some of what you're going to get in the new Versus era that's about a month or so away. So we're going to get that in for you. Very short set. Slane Castle, the only time they played that venue, and they should play it again. They should talk about playing it again. But I don't know. Can they pull 30,000 or 80,000? I don't know. So aside from that, we still have t-shirt sales going on right now. If you guys are interested in the Dark Matter shirt and the potato shirt, we do have limited on the potato shirt, but we got tons of Dark Matter shirts in stock. So if you want to head over to liveon4legs.com, they'll be available. If you click through the sliders at the top, you will find the links for those, and you're feel free to purchase, and I will send them to you right away. Hopefully you guys want to represent us on tour and we can get you the shirts out. Look, everybody going to the August and September shows, I'm sure we're going to want to see you. We're going to want to see you represent. So if you feel like representing, then I would love to send you guys a shirt. So head on over to liveon4legs.com, purchase one, and yeah, we'll all be represented out there. Okay, back to the rock. No introduction, no saying hello after coming back on stage for the encore break. We just bust right in to Who You Are, and then into Better Man, and then into State of Love and Trust. Now, Who You Are is kind of a statement song for this era. And to me, it always sounds best when it's gradually building, when it's gradually getting there. And it has sort of the Zen factor, like it kind of takes you into a zone. It kind of makes you almost think a little bit, and you're really focusing on what the band is doing. And the way that they can really pull that off to build and to let it just elevate and soar. And those are the best versions of Off He Goes. This one, a little too up tempo to have that same vibe. When it's more grooved, I feel like this song, that's where it's going to capitalize. But this one just had a little bit more of the, okay, let's work off of some energy. This has been an energetic crowd. And for yours truly, that isn't what I'm looking for in Who You Are.
Yeah, it's so tough with Who You Are to really get a big version. I don't know that we've ever, as much as I love the song, and I remember hearing it on the radio when they debuted it as the single from No Code, and like it always will have a special place for me, but I don't know that I ever remember like a big live version of it. I don't know if they ever really nailed it. And it got played a lot this year, obviously, but after that, not really. And like brought it back for the first time last year since 2016. Yeah, it's just so tough to nail the tempo and to get the vibe of it right. It is cool though, they do the Falling Fast lyric, the alternate lyric from it, and not the album version, which is interesting. But yeah, I'm with you. It should be a standout from these shows, but it's just not for some reason.
Yeah, I've heard really good versions of this in 1996 where it does have that vibe, but all of the parts need to be working. Everything needs to be clicking on it in order for it to do that. And sometimes It feels like they're in that zone, and sometimes for this one, again, you had a lot of up-tempo songs at the show, so that was just the mindset. And this one didn't quite have the Who You Are vibe. I would love to see more consistency with this. Obviously, they're not going to make it consistent. It felt like more of a one and done last year, but who knows? That could be one of those surprises, as we mentioned before. But I think you're right. I think it's really tough to get perfect.
Especially without Jack nowadays, it's going to be very, very hard.
Right.
Because the rhythm of it has to be perfect. You've got to really hit the groove on it for it to really be, for it to get to something really special. And I think it's just hard for them to do.
But Better Man is up next. You get some great crowd response in that, and it's another one where you have a big sing-along up on it, but also, look, Better Man's a sing-along, but State of Love and Trust is a sing-along too. And I think Better Man is always the sing-along, and that's pretty much the standard fare, but State of Love and Trust being a sing-along is a lot more impressive.
Oh, I'd say even at this point, State of Love and Trust more than Better Man. But I mean, give the crowd credit, they're on Better Man. But this is still really early on in the trajectory of Better Man. I think it was maybe they did save it for later one or two times in '96, but
it was in Maine, yeah, Augusta.
Right, but this wasn't the big showstopper song yet in the show. I mean, yeah, State of Love and Trust, I think, is the bigger song at this point.
Yeah, maybe, but I think a lot of people, I think it's still getting played on radio. And granted, you want to do some comparisons here. It's not up there with the most played Vitalogy songs. If you look at Corduroy, it's at 62, Spin to Black Circle's 56, Last Exit 63, and this one's 48. So it's a rung below a little bit. It's not at Satan's Bed level or anything like that, but they didn't want to make this a key element to their set yet, I don't think. But again, the crowd being invested is what makes this song the song moving forward. That kind of breaking of the curse sort of bit that he's talked about on Storytellers before. But State of Love and Trust, I think it being the last big uplifting, big arena song that they do here, because they're going to go with Off He Goes as the penultimate song. Then they're going to do basically an off the cuff Hunger Strike into Ledbetter. State of Love and Trust is going to be your last big moment here. And it feels like this is one of those things where you get the crowd invested and you can just run with it. It's all clicking on this.
Yeah, I mean, singles was so huge in the '90s. I mean, everyone had that thing, so everybody knew State of Love and Trust. That always gets a big reaction.
I kind of mentioned this before with the other speech, and I knew that Ed would say it, and I thought he said it when he talked about the heroin guy, but he says it here. Since we're in the land of storytellers, this is a little story. That's going into Off He Goes, which he usually tells the story about. This is about a bad friend, points to himself, bad friend being himself. Not usually known for being a penultimate song at all. I think when you think of it as an encore song, personally, I think about it being in that first three. I've gotten it in that spot a couple of times once the Lightning Bolt tour was happening, and it works there. And it's a good performance, but at this point, like, is this going to be the driving factor off of No Code that's going to get your crowd invested at the end of the set? You know what I mean? Present tense was used in this role a little bit too, and I feel like present tense has that.
They did that at the show before in Cork. Yeah, sorry, they did present tense into Ledbetter.
Right, and it has that big ending that makes you feel like, okay, the show is winding down a little bit, but this is just kind of like a little bit of a kumbaya. And yeah, it has all of the great ups and downs, and it's a really nice version of this song, but did it fit within what an encore should be in 1996?
I don't know. This encore is a little disjointed, I'll say. Normally, nowadays you would get Better Man would be the penultimate one where you get everybody going before the end. But, I mean, yeah, this is only the 8th performance of Off He Goes. We didn't mention that with Mankind. It's only the 7th time that ever played it. And that's still really, really early. And for them to be trying stuff, seeing what works, like we kind of talked about with the Dark Matter stuff, let's see if they mix that up a little bit and try some different things. But This off he goes. I think the way Jack plays it, he plays a little more upbeat than I think we're used to hearing it. It's not like one of those kind of folkier versions he's kind of doing. Like he's accenting the 2 and the 4 really hard on that snare drum, and it gives it a different feel. Like they were trying to make it a little more anthemic and try to build up a little bit of something with it. But I don't think you would see this very often afterwards. I think it very quickly went to that early encore spot or kind of a mid to late main set song where it can have more of a spotlight on it. But yeah, still one of my favorite songs. I mean, this is just an early version that you can tell they hadn't quite gotten to where they needed to go with it.
Another reason why this could be the penultimate song and have it be sort of a low key is that I think they were gonna end this set with Leaving Here, which would have worked
Yeah.
in relation to that. But things change. People speak, and when they speak, they listen. So Stone puts it out there to the world. If you want to make a request, we will take one. That is not a thing that they usually do and not a thing that they did back then. And it sounds like Leaving Here is their original plan. But Ed does say he hears the crowd asking for Hunger Strike.
They asked for Hunger Strike, and we can't. But I can feel all the powerless when my cup's already overfilled. But it's on the table, the minds a little open, and the arms of babies say my darkness. But it's on the table, the miles are jumping. I'm going hungry. I'm going hungry. Going hungry. Going hungry.
So they're just going to go into it and oblige. Ed's going to play around with it and let the crowd sing. Forget some of the lyrics a little bit, but the crowd playing Cornell is a lot of fun until they just abruptly stop the song.
When it switches to the chorus, when the riff changes, they're not going to go into that part. But yeah, it's interesting because when they started, like Stone starts and Ed goes, "We can't." He feels like he's like, "Nope, we're not. We can't do that one." And then Stone keeps playing it, and the crowd picks up, and he kind of goes, "Oh, okay," and then starts singing it. And then you get the big crowd moment with him taking, like you said, the Cornell vocal, and it turns into something. Yeah, it's just fun. It's something that the crowd got to be a part of the show and to make this little thing happen. And I think you had mentioned earlier they would do it a few more times. Song was kind of hanging around, like you said, with radio too. Hunger Strike's still a big radio hit. So anytime you take requests, you're going to get Hunger Strike. Yeah, it's just interesting that he tried to shut her down early and then was like, "Oh, okay." And then they ended up doing it anyway.
Yeah, 4 more times on this leg.
Hmm.
And I think this was the only time where the crowd were the ones that pushed it. And I think back to the Berlin one, especially, where it just kind of happens mid set out of nowhere. And I think they saw this and they're like, you know what? We can dick around with this. Or maybe Ed is thinking to himself, like, yeah, I shouldn't have forgotten those lyrics. So let me make it up to myself and do it a couple times. And it worked. And the crowd obviously has some fun with it. It's a nice little moment before you're going to end your set. So now Ed's mentioning, he's like, okay, he mentions Home Alive. And he says, we can do Leaving Here or we can do Footsteps. And they both get pretty good reactions from the crowd.
Footsteps is
Or-
bigger.
Than Leaving Here,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
And Leaving Here was fairly new
sure.
from what they
Sure.
were doing at the time. So I think they had only started doing it at the end of the 95 tour. So still
Right,
very,
because yeah,
very
that
new.
that Letterman was a real early one.
Yep, for sure. And yeah, the winner by a mile is Yellow Ledbetter. It's very, very clear. This version, and I feel like they weren't at that point with this version where it's like, okay, let's focus on making this song either a party version or a perfect version. I think it was somewhere in between. This version felt a little bit like band practice to me. And it's like, okay, whatever you guys want to add to this. You want to add something to this? Go for it. You want to add something to this? Go for it. But I guess it's maybe coming off of Hunger Strike and it just kind of being pretty laxed and loose. Maybe that's the direction they take with it here. It's like everybody just kind of gets a little piece of it. But clapping, crowd loves the clapping, and Mike takes them home clapping along to this. But I feel like it can go either way on this. This one, I don't know how you feel about it, but I thought this one had a little bit more of the band practice vibe.
I think that is a little bit because it was more off the cuff, like it wasn't on the original set list, obviously,
That's
so
fair.
they're having to kind of make it up as they go, and they weren't really prepared to do it, so you're going to get a little bit more of a loose version, but the clapping is definitely back. The crowd is into it, obviously, being their choice, but yeah, it did feel a little more sparse, like it felt a little more like they were still feeling it out, more like those original versions. Again, just like Better Man, you're still only the 39th performance of Yellow Ledbetter. It's not like they were doing it every night or anything. That would start to come, later this year and into 98. But yeah, I got that feeling too, where like it definitely is not a party version, and it just felt like they were kind of just fulfilling the request like you would get nowadays with something that they hadn't played in a long time.
Yeah, sure. And that's fine. I think the crowd was happy, and that's the most important part out of this. So,
Yeah.
there we have that. There's our set. All right. Since the show is over, let's pick 3 moments to go back on and claim as our favorite.
My number 3 is going to be Hail Hail. Definitely a Jack standout from the show. My number 2 is going to be Immortality. And my number 1, give it up for Stone. How about Mankind at number 1?
Yeah, Mankind is in my 3 for sure. I like this version a whole lot. And yeah, your 3 is very, very close to my 3. Actually, I might take out Immortality just to get a different song in. So I'm going to say my number 3 is going to be Mankind, and my number 2 is going to be Hail Hail. And I'm going to give the nod to In My Tree as the number 1. Look at that. I'm
All right.
stealing your favorite song
Yeah.
as my number 1. When are you going to pick Brandon J? Have you ever picked Brandon J as your number 1?
I'm sure I have.
We'll have to go to the videotape on that. But hey, look, a lot of performances were excellent at this show, and I could have picked any of the 3 to be the number 1, but since John didn't take In My Tree, I figured, why not? It was a fantastic performance. Now let's get into that number rating that is oh so meaningful to so many of you, that if I give a 9 to a Hershey Park show and give a 9 to a Salt Lake City show, the world erupts apparently. But let's see what we got with this one. What are you rating it?
Yeah, this is great. Like the floor is obviously very high in this era. You're not going to get a lot of poorly rated shows. I'm at a solid 8 on this one.
Tie game. That's where I am too. It's 8-8. Yeah, I think maybe if the mix was a little better and you're able to hear sort of the back and forth and the balance of it, maybe I get a little bit more in my head. I'm like, all right, I see what they're going for here, and you feel a little bit more of what they're doing. But it's a very, very solid 8 show. And for those of you that are going to the Dublin show this weekend, this is a good one. Go and listen to the show. Go listen to it. Get hyped and kind of bring you in and make it feel like you're there, like you're got the Pearl Jam Ireland history behind you. So, okay. Now, of course, we're going back to doing the same thing that we did last month, where we were covering all of the locations. We're not doing every single location. We are skipping like 1 or 2 of them, but next week, I think we had tried for the last year to do this show, and we cut it a couple times for other things. thinking that there will be other times and other moments to do it. But next week is going to be a pretty big show because we are doing the first night of Hyde Park from 2022. So as we mentioned before, Better Man opener right there. That's exactly what you're going to get. And it's a very cool set. I think I kind of like night one better than night two. It has that version of Quick Escape with the God Save the Queen. And I think night two was Throw Your Hatred Down, if I'm not mistaken, but that was a terrific moment as well. But night one has a lot of gems. Breath in the third spot, I think. Yeah, there's some really cool stuff happening. So we'll talk
Yeah,
about it all
The video
next
screen
week.
too. They get a lot of video screen action there.
We'll talk about the video screen, of course. We'll have footage for this. So there'll be a lot to talk about. All right. If you like what we had to talk about today and you haven't listened to this podcast every single week on a weekly basis, what you can do is you can head on over to your favorite platform, the one that you're listening to right now, or if you prefer to go on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or even YouTube, you can subscribe over there and then you get the updates of when our episodes come out, which hint, hint, it's every Wednesday. It hasn't not been on a Wednesday in a while, but for the foreseeable future, Wednesday is our day. And I think people are into the routine, so we'll continue doing that, of course. But if you're over there, make sure if you see the ability to rate our show, hopefully we have done the job well enough where you can give us a 5-star. And obviously the research and everything that goes into it is definitely 5-star, and the hard work that we all do definitely deserves that 5-star, but I'll leave it up to you guys to decide. And on top of that, you can leave us a comment on individual episodes of course, on YouTube, but also on Spotify as well. And for Apple Podcasts, you can just leave a comment on the homepage, let everybody know what you're thinking about the show and what other people can expect when they listen to our show, because this is the time, guys. Everybody's going to be waiting in merch lines and GA lines everywhere. You're going to be going to bars and talking to new Pearl Jam fans. And if something comes up where it's like, hey, I was at this show. Oh, I was at this show too. Hey, have you listened to the Live on Four Legs episode of this? Well, what's on Live on Four Legs? And that's how that all comes together. And that's how we keep growing. And this becomes even bigger than we think. And from being in Seattle, I can confidently say it's bigger than we think. So, and thank you everybody for coming up to me and saying all the kind things that you did. It did make both Javier and I's day. So that was very, very cool of everybody to meet you all and get all that. So yeah, that's the process going forward. And hopefully we just keep building. That's only one way. And that is not down to hell. It is up to, I don't know, not heaven, because I feel like that's too far, but it's up to the clouds. It's straight up to the clouds. All right, we got to end this one. So this is the end. We're here, but not for much longer. And although we may be parting ways, miss you already, miss you always. Well, hopefully the luck of the Irish kicks in and you guys get a good show this weekend. And next week, we will have a massive show from Hyde Park. So until then, see ya on the pod.
Pull them up. Pull them up.